Hey, this is the World Advice Channel too. What I want to talk about today is a question of were there ever great African civilizations? Is what I'll be discussing for this video. So now that I mentioned that and you know what I'll be talking about, let's get started. So when it comes to the topic of was there ever great African civilizations, let alone for that matter, was there ever African civilizations? The simple answer to the question is yes. I do believe were African civilizations. Now, the reason why I believe there were African civilizations that existed is simply down to the fact that creating a civilization in the first place is actually not as hard as you would actually believe it to be. As the one of the fundamental foundations of a civilization, anyone who understands anything about creating a civilization is that it comes down to two fundamental factors, okay? A permanent settlement, a settlement where people just stay at and live and instead of moving the settlement, and secondly, the fact that people are actually growing food in the vicinity of the area. So they don't have to move throughout the land like hunter gatherers in the past were um of course had to do. So when it comes to those two particular circumstances, was there is it possible there could have been ever a black civilization? Yes, there definitely could have been. Okay, because even those two fundamental things that might seem quite silly or insignificant in the greater scheme of things actually can add up to a civilization for that matter, okay? Because civilizations, when you look at the history of civilizations, whether it could be the Romans, the ancient Greeks, the ancient Chinese, the ancient Indians, the truth of the matter is it's all the same fundamental thing, okay? Which is that the moment you is that I should say, for that matter, is that it takes a long time for them to truly grow and truly become big and massive, okay? It starts off with anywhere from a few hundred individuals, then a few thousand, then tens of thousands, and hundreds of thousands, and so on and so forth, which takes a span of, at the very minimum, 100 or so plus years, okay? It takes a long time for the population to grow rapidly, okay? And that is the truth of the matter, okay? And as I'm certain you are also well aware, especially when people do not have to worry about eating or drinking as much because there's food in the vicinity of the area. You must also realize people have the ability to learn new things, and not just learn new things but retain new things. And those two fundamental things when it comes to our ability to learn, those two fundamental traits, is what is important for things to developing, okay? Because someone figures something out, for example, let's just say for example, maybe might find out um, a way to irrigate the land better, and then he passes away, and then someone already knows all the things he already knows, and he adds a few things, and then he finds a better way to irrigate the land, and then he passes away, and then the cycle continues on. Whether it can relate to that or it can relate to things like being able to create better roads and stuff, knowledge is something that is always developing and expanding for that matter, okay? It's not as hard to develop a civilization as you would imagine it to be quite blunt and honest with you. It's really not. It's not saying it's not hard, but it's not as hard as you would believe it to be for that matter, okay? Um, it's really not. It just comes down to retaining and learning new things, especially if you have a culture of people that are interested in learning new things and expanding and developing for that matter, okay? So of course, when it comes to a particular issue, no, it's not that hard to create a civilization as you would imagine it to be. You don't have to be a savant or anything like that to develop one. It just comes down to a fundamental principle. Is it a developed civilization? Or I should say, is it a settlement, a permanent settlement? Yes. Do they have the ability to grow food? Yes. And over time, naturally, things just build up over time. It's not that hard to figure out or do. And that's one of the things people don't understand about intelligence. And it's the biggest misconception about intelligence when it comes to things like IQ and stuff like that, like IQ tests and so on and so forth, is that people tend to associate it, being able to accomplish even the slightest, most amazing things, as a sign of extreme brilliance and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. And of course, let's not forget infamously genetics, but actually, in general, coming up with anything, you do not have to be um, genetically so-called more advanced or something, even if that was the case, which definitely is not the case when it comes to this particular issue for that matter. Okay, the truth of the matter is, when it comes to that particular situation, of intelligence, it just simply comes down to ability to retain um it, or to simplify it even more, it's the ability to develop information, okay, develop your knowledge, and over time, things just naturally build up over time for that matter. It's not as hard as you'd imagine it to be. It's just simply that and a desire. That's all it is. It's not anything overly complicated or this and that. If you have a desire to be intelligent and desire to be the best you can be, and so on and so forth, it's going to naturally, you're going to realize over time, things are going to develop over time instead of course, having to worry about it, about, oh, I was not born with this genetic so-called B21 whatever crap, so I'm not going to be able to develop something amazing. So that idea is bullshit. You do not have to worry about that stuff. All it really comes down to is being able to have, as I was saying before, have a desire to be the best you can be, desire, for example, to be intelligent, and obviously being able to have a basic well-functioning brain, being able to learn information, in other words, not just learn it but retain it so you don't forget information, and being able to develop it. You might have an idea and develop something that wasn't there before. Okay, that's all it really takes. You don't have to overcomplicate it and think this is bullshit about, oh, I have to have this particular genetic genome or something. No, it's not that. That's not true at all. And that's the first point I want to make across. Okay, it just simply comes down to how desired the people are in developing their civilization. Okay, and the second point I want to make, aside from the first point I wanted to make, is it also comes down to the fact that that it also doesn't take into consideration that people believe there was never an African civilization, tend to also forget the fact that there's also a lot of evidence that kind of proves there was, such as the fact that for slavery, it's easily estimated between like 1500 to when it was outlawed in the 1800s for the Western transatlantic slave trade, there was 20 million Africans who died in the process. Now, anyone who has a basic degree of knowledge on history when it comes to, this particular situation, is that, or as well as, of course, understanding human evolution and biology and so on and so forth, you cannot have 20 million people for a society of people that's very primitive, that are hunter gatherers. Hunter gatherers would not have the capability and the ability to have that many people. Such a massive population, especially when you take in consideration it was only from one particular region of Africa. And Africa is a much bigger place than just simply West Africa. So when you take that into consideration, you kind of realize, yes, this is kind of bullshit, in all honesty. Because hunter gatherer societies are very primitive, and for the fact that they're very primitive, um, they don't have as much people. They tend to get sicker from diseases easily and die off at much quicker, faster rates. So as a result of that, they would not be capable of having that many people in that span of a period of time being taken, even in a span of a few centuries, as it would have, as Africa, of course, would have a much more dramatically smaller population than, of course, the 20 million who died, not to mention the millions who survived and made it there, and of course the millions who, of course, were still left in Africa and somehow were not kidnapped in the slave trade. So that's another point to make when it comes to that particular issue. And that is pretty much what I have to say. So if there's anything to end us off, just to end us off, is also when it comes to um this particular issue of black accomplishments. The truth of the matter is, when it comes to black accomplishments in general, there's a difference between a culture like Africa and a culture like in America. So the truth of the matter is, it's a very different culture. Africans, not to stereotype African Americans being stupid, are more driven to be intelligent. And obviously, the culture centuries ago would have been very different than how it would be like in America today. So to sum it up, what makes people intelligent is being driven. And if you're driven, you will do it. And that's the truth of the matter. So anyway, this is my video. This is all I have to say. All I have to say to end this video off is that I hope you enjoyed it and found it informative. And just remember, if you like this video and videos like this, remember to thumb this video up and hit the subscribe button. And this is all I have to say, and simply put it, I'm out. So bye.